Hello and welcome to another virtual program with the Paul Sawyer Public Library. My name is Diane Dehoney. I'm the Community Service Librarian at Paul Sawyer, and it is so wonderful to have all of you joining us this evening for another fantastic program. We have partnered with the Frankfort Audubon Society to do a bird identification. It's turned into a series. We've had several of these now, and it's just been fun. And we've taken a few months off, and now we're back tonight with Who's That? A Raptor identification workshop. And our presenter tonight is Noor Salam from the Frankfort Audubon Society. If you would please, in deference to her as our speaker, if you wouldn't mind to mute yourself. Noor will be getting her presentation here just momentarily. And we also have Lisa Gabbard from the Frankfort Audubon Society, helping her this evening with some of the interactive portions of the program. So if you do have questions during the presentation, you can put those in the chat, or if you'd like to hold those until the end of the presentation, then you can unmute yourself and ask those questions. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Noor. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Diane. And welcome back to the people who've already attended some of our ID series. And welcome to everyone who's here and interested in raptors. And I'm so thrilled to be sharing some tips and tricks about how to identify them when you're out on your walks. As Diane just said, this is an interactive webinar and we want to hear from you. So feel free to ask questions by clicking on the chat option at the bottom and then typing your messages here, and the amazing Lisa will let me know when you're asking questions and answering quizzes. So be ready. The birds we're going to talk about today are the main raptors occurring in Kentucky. We're going to learn the most characteristic sounds that some of them make, but just be mindful that some species make more than one sound, and there's a lot of variation, so they don't make it easy. And as Diane said, this presentation is going to be on the library YouTube channel, and feel free to go check that out because we have some of our previous presentations on there, such as backyard bird ID, hummingbirds, and an intro to identifying woodpeckers and mimic birds. This presentation is one of my favorites because you do not need binoculars for most of these birds, and I'm going to help you learn them whether you do or don't have binoculars. So I'm very excited. Let's talk about vultures first. They are some of the most amazing and underappreciated birds that occur in Kentucky. The turkey vulture has a very strong sense of smell. And the reason for that is because they are scavengers. What does a scavenger do? They find dead animals and feed on them. So they don't hunt, they just go to carcasses and feed on those. So their strong sense of smell helps them find those carcasses very easily. Turkey vultures have a red face and are highly intelligent. Now, how do you ID them when they're in flights? They have a Y-shaped white underwing pattern, as you can see in this picture. Next, we have the other vulture that occurs in Kentucky and North America. That is the black vulture. Now, these guys are not, they're not very as good as turkey vultures in their sense of smell. They actually have a very poor sense of smell and rely on eyesight to find their food. They have a dark face as opposed to the turkey vulture, and they actually cheat a little bit and follow turkey vultures around to find food because turkey vultures are so good at it. In flight, well, they're very cute, as you can see from this picture. And in flight, they have just these two white wingtips that you're seeing here in this picture. Now, as I said, the turkey vulture has a red face and the black vulture has a dark face. But that's pretty hard to see when they're soaring very high. So how do you do that without binoculars? Well, you got to look at what the color pattern is in their underwings. And I have a pretty good trick for you right here that you can remember. When I first learned vultures, I could never remember which one was turkey vulture, which one was black vulture. So here's my trick. As I said before, they have a Y-shaped underwing pattern, and the word turkey ends with a Y. So always remember turkey for the white Y shape. And black vultures have the white wingtips. These animals don't make noises. They're actually pretty silent most times, and they just make hissing noises sometimes when they're finding amongst each other. Next, we have exhibitiforms. This group of birds includes hawks, osprey, and eagles, and more. The osprey is an aerial diver, meaning they will soar very high and dive at high speed to catch fish. One of the most beautiful moments seeing osprey is seeing them doing their dive into the water. They are very distinct with their black eye line, and in flight, they have a very white belly and very, very dark wrists, as you can see here. They occur worldwide, by the way, not just in Kentucky. You can go to your local hatchery to see these birds, and that'll be a very high likelihood for seeing an osprey if you're interested. Next, we have the red-tailed hawk. Now, that is one of the largest hawks in Kentucky, and as the name says, they have a reddish-brown tail. Let's listen to what they sound like. So, red-tailed hawks have a very long, drawn-out keer sound. This is one of the most distinct sounds you could hear. Well, what about this bird? Is that a red-tailed hawk? It doesn't have a red tail, does it? So this actually is a juvenile red-tailed hawk. And you're going to ask me, well, how do I ID it? So actually, there's a very cool trick to identify red-tailed hawks, whether they're young or adults. You can look at this very distinct brown belt and realize that you're looking at a red-tailed hawk. This is easy to look at, whether they're perched somewhere or in flight. Be careful, the sound that we just listened to can be made by a blue jay. So I have been tricked by blue jays in my backyard mimicking red-tailed hawks. So before you decide on what bird you're listening to, take a look around, make sure there isn't a blue jay tricking you. Now we're going to talk about the red-shouldered hawk. This one is slightly smaller than the red-tailed hawk. They have a very nice reddish-brown chest, and when they're flying, you can see why they're called red-shouldered hawk, because of this red pattern on their chest and shoulders. Another really important thing about identifying these birds is that they have an alternating black and white pattern on their tail, but the white pattern is actually very thin. It's very thin bands. They make a sound that's very similar to red-tailed hawks, but this time it's very repetitive and in a very short period of time. So the sound quality is different and it's very repetitive as compared to the red-tailed hawk. Let's listen to that one more time. Hopefully that didn't spook people's cats at home. I can see Lisa nodding. All right. The last hawk in the Buteo category, which I'm going to explain later, is called the broad-winged hawk. Now, this looks almost identical to the red-shouldered hawk, but there's a few key differences. The chest isn't red, and the tail is very different. So this one has black and white patterns as well, except that they're all equally spaced and equally sized. These birds are also found in deep woods. And as we just heard the red-shouldered hawk, the sound that the broad-winged hawks makes is really unique. And once you hear that, you're gonna maybe feel more comfortable with identifying these birds. So this very high-pitched two-note sound is a pretty telltale sign to a broad-winged hawk when you're out walking or hiking in the woods. Next, we're going to talk about much smaller hawks, and that's what we call accipiters. We're going to talk about Cooper's hawks and Sharpshoot hawks, and I know what you're going to say, they look almost identical, and I personally still struggle with identifying hawks, but this presentation is meant to help anyone who's a beginner or just kind of already starting to birdwatch. So what's up with all these identical birds? Cooper's hawks look very similar to what we just talked about, but remember, size is very important. And if you can establish a relative size to things around you, it will be extremely helpful. The birds we previously talked about, red-tailed, red-shouldered, and broadwing, are much larger than a crow. The birds we're going to talk about now, Cooper's hawk and Sharpshoot, are smaller than a crow. They also have very long tails compared to the previous birds. The Cooper's hawk has a reddish chest and a red eye as well when they're adults. This is what they look like when they're juveniles. You can still identify them by their very long tail and by the chest pattern. On the other hand, Sharpshoot hawks, which again look very similar, this time are much, much smaller. They're actually almost the size of a robin or a dove. They're also in the accipiter category, have a long tail and a reddish chest. They also, if you can't tell size, you can also tell that they're Sharpshoot hawks by their very square end of the tail and by the fact that they have almost no neck compared to the Cooper's hawk. And here's another example of how small they look on a bird feeder. The northern harrier is a pretty fascinating bird as well. They are often seen hunting in open fields and have a very, very distinct white rump. And that's the area right between their lower backs and their tail. Mississippi kites are one of the migratory raptors we have in Kentucky. They migrate to South America every year for winter and come back here in the spring. They feed on insects and have narrow and pointed wings, as opposed to the raptors we were just talking about. Now, let's talk about eagles. Who doesn't know a bald eagle? Did you know, though, that they not only feed on fish, but also steal fish? One of their favorite hobbies is stealing fish from Osprey, and I've actually seen that myself, and it was very entertaining. Identifying a bald eagle is obviously easy using their white heads and their white tails, but they don't reach these colors until they're adults. This is what they look like when they're young before reaching their 4th year of age. So when you see a raptor with very large, almost rectangular wings and a very nice mixture of brown and white, like a mottled pattern in their underwing, that is most definitely a bald eagle. Bald eagles, if you were wondering, have some seasonal movements. They don't always stay in the same location. They have hunting grounds near lakes and rivers, but when these hunting grounds, as I just said, lakes and rivers freeze, they will move away to continue to find food and survive, and will come back to their hunting grounds and breeding grounds when come spring, usually by January or March. golden eagles, as opposed to bald eagles, are not short distance migrants. They are long distance migrants. And studies have shown, including the Bernheim golden eagle migration tracking, these studies have shown that golden eagles that overwinter in Kentucky will travel as far as Canada to breed and create a nest and a family, which is fascinating. Eagles have both bald eagles and golden eagles have a very highly developed sense of sight. So eagles have 20/5 vision, while we humans have 20/20 vision. What does that mean? This means that something that an eagle can see from 20 feet away is something that we can see from only 5 feet away. Their vision is 4 times better than ours. Now, I hope one day that I'll see both a golden eagle and a bald eagle in the same moment. That will be a pretty exceptional moment. If that does happen, how do you tell them apart? Young bald eagles look kind of similar, but can you tell which one is the golden eagle in this picture? It is this one. So this golden eagle, as you can see, does not have this checkered pattern of brown and white in their underwings. And that's kind of the simplest way of explaining it. I see Lisa has a question.
Thank you. I wanted to lower my hand before I forgot. I know there are a lot of raptors and we're trying to hurry, but I was wondering if you could go back a couple slides and let us hear the bald eagle sound.
Oh yeah.
Because I was going to make a comment when you played the Redtailed Hawk sound that when we hear what's supposed to be an eagle in movies, that it's actually often the red tail, because I don't think the eagle sounds quite that majestic.
You're absolutely right. And thank you for reminding me. So here is what the bald eagle sound like. So yeah, so red-tails have a long, steady keer sound, while bald eagles have a very high-pitched, kind of staggered call. And I'm so glad you reminded me, because this is going to come up in the quiz. So good thing we talked about what bald eagles sound like. Okay, so we've learned a lot so far, and I wanted to stop a little bit and see how we're all doing. What does this bird look like to you? And you can type your answers in the chat right now. Try to guess the right answer.
There's some quick people getting it right. BV, black vulture. Did have one person guess osprey.
Mm-hmm. Well, without further ado, this is a black vulture. It is not an osprey, because if the easiest way to think about this is osprey are mostly going to be white in color. On their belly side, they're going to be white in color, and on their back side, they're slightly brown. But the turkey vultures have the distinct head that has no feathers. The absence of feathers on their heads helps them avoid dirt and infections when they're eating through carcasses. And you can tell that they're black vultures too by the dark head and the white ends of their wings. All right, next we have this bird. Try to guess what sound this is.
Can't fool these people.
Good, because if you guessed bald eagle, you can definitely blame all the movie producers. Like Lisa said, I can't remember how many movies I've seen that will play this sound and yet show a bald eagle majestically flying as they do. But in reality, and I don't know how we're doing on answers, Lisa, but hopefully everyone guessed this is the Red-tailed Hawk. So good job, everyone.
Lots of people got that one.
Good, good. So send complaints to movie producers next time they do that. All right. Let's dive back into falcons. These are very, very small raptors, about the size, they can be the size of a dove or slightly larger. The first one, which is one of my favorite ones, is the American Kestrel. The male is very different from the female. The male is much more colorful. They have a plain reddish chest, while the female has a speckled white and brown chest. And on the other hand, they're very different from the back. So the male has a very colorful wing pattern that's very gray, and the female is brown. And their tails, look at their tails. The male has a dark black band, while the female doesn't. Be careful not to confuse these birds with doves, because it's very easy to confuse that. They fly almost in a very similar way, except that doves have this very pointed long tail, while the kestrels have a short and stubby square tail. Let's listen to what they sound like. If you are walking by an open field, this is a very common sound to hear, and the easiest way to remember is clee, clee, clee. It's very fast clee, clee, clee sounds. Another way to ID this bird without binoculars is by observing a very cool behavior. This behavior is called kestreling. So I'm gonna show you a video to explain what I'm talking about, but basically, if you're next to a field and you see a bird, small bird, hovering like a helicopter, that's a pretty unique sign that it is a kestrel. So that was the kestreling, and this is a really cool way for them to look for food and easily see it while they're kind of holding in place. All right, now we're going to talk about the Merlin, one of the less common distant cousins of the kestrel. They're slightly heavier and larger than the kestrel, and they're much less colorful. They're mostly gray. An interesting fact about them is that they take over old crow or raptor nests instead of making their own. Pretty cool. Now we're going to talk about the Peregrine Falcon. This is the fastest animal in the world. They can dive for their prey at a speed that's up to 186 miles per hour. Like I said, not the fastest bird, fastest animal. And they occur worldwide. They have pointed wings, just like falcons do, and they feed on birds, on smaller birds. It's time for owls. I know everyone's been excited about this one. The screech owl is one of the smallest owls in Kentucky, and they occur in two different variations. We have the red morph and the gray morph. And they also have a unique sound. They sound pretty much like horses to me, but let me know what you think. So when you hear that, you'll know. If it's a horse-like sound, it's Eastern screech owl. And I don't know what you thought, but hopefully you didn't think we're going to go through this whole presentation without seeing some very cute owl chicks. Not a chance. So these are young Eastern screech owls, and Eastern screech owls like to nest in boxes. Once these little guys are old enough, they will try to come out of their box, and before they're able to fly, they will try to jump on nearby branches, and that is called the branching stage. They will do that for a couple weeks usually before they can actually learn how to fly.
Hey, Nora, I wanted to draw folks' attention to a comment in the chat in case people aren't watching it. CJ mentions a cool site on explore.org where there's something called Nestflix, which how cute is that? He says, or I apologize, I don't know CJ's gender. For great close-ups of many raptors, including bald eagle, osprey, and peregrine falcon, check out the Nestflix group on explore.org. Live cams of several different nests. Most are active right now. Yeah, and then also on YouTube, and you may mention this, Nora, and I apologize if I've forgotten, but Cornell Labs does some really cool live bird cams and feeder cams too. So thanks for that, CJ. That's a new one for me. I had not heard of that one, so I'm going to write that down.
Yeah, thank you, CJ. I did not know about Nestflix. That is pretty cool. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, you'll get up close looks at some owl nests. Let's talk a little bit about the barred owl. These owls are much bigger than a screech owl. They're actually bigger than a crow. And they have dark eyes, and they're called barred owls because of this beautiful brown and white pattern they have all over their bodies. They feed on small mammals and crustaceans, which means they have a very strong beak. They have a very unique sound as well, and it can be remembered as them saying the sentence, "Who cooks for you?" So let's listen to that together. And let's listen to two barred owls talking to each other in what is called a duet. I wish I could know what they're saying to each other. So remember, who cooks for you for barred owls? Great horned owls are, again, a little bigger than barred owls. Their talons require, and let me explain, what is a talon? That's what the word is for a raptor's feet. And so a barred owl's talons require 28 pounds of force to open. So you definitely don't want to get anywhere near there. As opposed to barred owls, they have yellow eyes. And in case you didn't know, great horned owls can prey and hunt barred owls, which is kind of crazy because they're almost the same size. Let's listen to great horned owls' calls. So this one sounds like, the way I learned it was, "Who's awake? Me too." Try to listen to that again. that was the great horned owl.
And Nora, someone made a cool comment. It doesn't have a name there, so I can't give this person credit, but apparently there's a good IPA beer called Who Cooks for You. So some beer makers a barred owl fan and named their beer after a barred owl call. So that's really cool.
That is awesome. I'm loving these comments. Keep them coming. Thank you. That is awesome. I'm gonna have to try it now. Next, we have the short-eared owl. This is a much less common owl compared to the first three. They have very small ear tufts. They're nearly invisible and have yellow eyes like the great horned owl. And I love this picture that I just posted for you guys where it just floofs up and looks twice as big. And that I just really wanted to share that with you. Another less common owl is the barn owl. Not bards, barn with an N at the end. They feed on small mammals and have a heart-shaped face and a very beautiful brown body. Females have a slightly darker face, but they look identical otherwise. And hopefully now you feel ready for the quizzes again. And I have just 2 quizzes coming up for you. The first one is a sound quiz. All right, get ready. If you're still thinking about it, here's a hint.
Several people are already commenting. You're a good teacher, Nora.
Good.
It just keeps coming in. They got it.
Good. I'm so glad. That what makes my day with these presentations is that you took away some interesting information for you and your kids. So hopefully everyone guessed it right. This is a eastern screech owl. And more specifically, this one that you're seeing so well camouflaged in the tree is the gray morph. This one, I think I need to make more difficult quizzes, Lisa, but try to guess what this one is, and everyone's welcome to guess. If you want to make it harder, try to guess what sex this bird is.
Well, Caitlin Cross was quick on that. And not only did Caitlin get the right bird, but also the gender without even being asked. That was typed in before you even said it.
She's amazing.
Yep. Several people are then adding the answer, which I'll let you say. I won't say it.
Okay. So, as everyone guessed, this is the American Kestrel. And as you can see from the very colorful wings and the reddish plain belly, this is a male American Kestrel. Let's wrap up a little bit because I know raptors can be confusing. So the next time you see a raptor, there's a very good set of questions to ask yourselves before, feeling the struggle of raptor ID. So first of all, are the wings flat? And what I'm talking about is if you're looking straight at a raptor. So in the picture here to the left, there's several birds shown in that perspective. If the wings are in a V shape, that's a pretty good sign, pretty good odds that you're looking at a vulture, because most other hawks and owls will fly with their wings flat. So it will be just a line instead of a V shape. Other than that, if it's not a vulture, if the wings are flat, what's the size of this raptor? How big is it? Ask yourselves and look to the picture to the right. And you can see that biggest ones are eagles. And then the next size category is buteos. Now, what is a buteo? Those are the 3 first hawks we talked about. And that's red-tailed hawk, red-shouldered hawk, and broad-winged hawk. If the hawk is a little smaller than that, then it's either a Cooper's hawk or a sharp-shinned hawk, which is in the accipiter category. Another way to tell that it is a Cooper's or Sharpshoot is by this very long tail. The other ones have a short, kind of fanned out tail, and that's a very unique sign as well. What's the wing shape? That's really important to understand falcons. Falcons have very pointed wings compared to all of the others, and are also much smaller. So size is, again, very important. And you don't have to make measurements of anything if you take a picture or if you're just looking at something. Just think of the bird as it relates to its surroundings, and think about a relative size instead of thinking about actual size. I hope this helps you in the field, and I hope this presentation increased your appreciation of raptors. And in that light, I wanted to give a little bit of tips about ways you can help raptors. You can reduce lead poisoning by reducing the use of lead hunting ammunition. Instead of using poison in pest control or rat control, you can use some alternatives such as putting up barriers or traps. It's a little more work, but it really helps having less raptors come into the rehabs with poison. You can also learn about, set up, and monitor an owl or a kestrel box on your property if you so wish. You can also visit and donate to a raptor rehab center, and to mention a few in Kentucky, there's the Raptor Rehab of Kentucky in Louisville, there's the Liberty Nature and Raptor Center, and the Flatwoods Wildlife. And all of the contacts and addresses for all of these are on the Kentucky Fish and Wildlife Department website. You can also join us as a member with the Frankfort Audubon Society by looking at our website. We are now offering one annual private bird walk or sit to learn more about birds that interest you, and without being in the pressure of a group bird walk. We also host regular group bird walks that are free and open to anyone who would like to be in there. By becoming a member, you're furthering conservation and education in your community and for the next generation. I would like to thank our co-hosts, the Paul Sawyer Public Library, and Diane and Lisa for always being amazing. Thank you for everyone who submitted photos from the Kentucky Birders group. And there's some really great online resources here to quiz yourself further, because apparently my quizzes weren't hard enough. So you can go to birdingquiz.com, bird test, and select your state and then raptors. There's also a really great podcast about birds. And as someone mentioned, there's Nestflix that will have like live images and videos of owl and hawk nests. And there's also the Cornell Lab bird camps. Feel free to sign up for our free newsletter through this email and follow us on Facebook. So not only do we have all of our upcoming events on Facebook, but we also plan on asking you what you would like to learn about next time. So once you follow us, you'll be able to answer that poll and let us know what you'd like to see. Thank you so much for listening. And now I'll take all of the questions.
Well, I'm sure there will be some, but right now we have several thank yous. I just want you to know Joyce and Maria and Chris and iPhone and Tamara or Tamara. Lynn all say thank you, great job, etc. Michelle as well. So we appreciate you all saying that and for being here and making comments and questions that make it more interactive. I'm glad to see you here, Parker, and participating, and it's been great. I'm glad Kelly has found some stuff to share with students, and always happy. Yeah, the Redtailed Hawk versus the Eagle is funny, isn't it?
Yeah.
Deb, hi Deb, glad you could be here. Rachel asks about the golden eagles. You mentioned Bernheim, but I found recently that not a lot of folks were familiar with Bernheim Forest. Can you say a little more about that, Nora?
Yes, of course. Bernheim is a forest in Bullitt County, so a little bit south of Louisville, and I had the chance to go hike there 2 weeks ago. It's a nonprofit, and aside from providing a large acreage of forests to the community, they are involved in a lot of conservation projects, such as tracking the migration of golden eagles. So to do that, they will set up of course, a humane trap for golden eagles, will capture them, and will tag them with a device that allows them to track where they're going, the path they're taking up to Canada, where they're stopping. There's a lot of information. If you visit the Bernheim website, there is a lot of interesting information about golden eagles and their migration pattern right here in Kentucky. So, and as of now, the golden eagles have already, I should say golden eagle, not eagles, have already departed on their route to Canada, and that's where they breed and make a nest. So the next time they'll be here will be in the winter of this year.
So a bunch of questions are rolling in. Everybody's put on their thinking caps. Did I interrupt you? No, I'm sorry. Did I interrupt you?
No, I'm excited for the questions.
Yeah, me too. So the Quinn family asks, are there any or many bald eagle nests in central Kentucky? And I had made a comment earlier to someone about them really making a comeback in Kentucky. Seems like in the last 20 years or so. Do you have any more information on that, Nora?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know exactly how many nests are in central Kentucky, but I can tell you that when I was talking about how you can help raptors, what I should have mentioned was previous successes that have helped raptors recover. So, you know, lead poisoning is still a problem, and then poison from pest control is still a problem. But thankfully, due to the ban of DDT, which was a very bad pesticide, bald eagles, peregrine falcons have made a huge comeback. They were listed as endangered for quite a while. And then thankfully to the banning of DDT, which has, what DDT does is thins their eggshells. So when they lay eggs, they're just very easy to break, and there's very low survival for chicks. So after DDT was banned, they've made a big comeback, and I'm very thankful for that that happening, because without certain measures, we have a lot to lose.
So true. Yeah. Another good question, and I hear this a lot, and I was thinking about this kind of thing when we were showing some of the more common hawks. This person asks, Tamara, is there a difference between a buzzard and a vulture? And I was thinking when we were showing the Redtailed Hawk that when I lived in Owen County, a lot of people called Redtailed chicken hawks, and they called Kestrel sparrow hawks. So I know a lot of times there are sort of local colloquialism type names for them. So can you speak to the buzzard and vulture question?
I have heard the word buzzard used for vultures. And like you said, chicken hawk, sparrow hawk. I don't know these, I don't know other common words for other birds, but I'll think about it and let you all know. Yeah, it's you can call them whatever you want, but if you are interested in submitting your observations while you're out on a walk, you can use eBird. That is an app that you can download on your phone. And if you see a red-tailed hawk, to submit it on eBird, you definitely have to use the name Redtailed Hawk, but it is totally fine to call it, chicken hawk or what you have grown up calling it. Yeah. Yeah, those names, those common names are just what those observations use.
There are actually, I hope I don't misspeak. I think there's a type of raptor in Europe that is actually called a buzzard, but it looks like what we would call a hawk here. So it actually isn't even a kind of vulture. So yeah, the names can get a little confusing, but in Kentucky, we have the two vultures, and yes, buzzard is a nickname for those.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, great
Somebody
question.
asks, this is Maria again. They've been hearing a barred owl in their woods, which is always so exciting. And she asks how we might be able to catch a glimpse of barred owls. And I remember learning, well, obviously I didn't learn it because I'm not going to remember it. So I'm asking you, Nor. I know barred owls have brown eyes, and great horned and screech owls, which of course, those are the most common ones probably that we see and hear around here. They have yellow eyes, and it has something to do with what time of day or night they hunt. And
I am not familiar with that, and that's something I'm still learning, but I will say that barred owls are really common near water because they love crayfish and crustaceans. The only thing I can say is if you have where you're seeing them, if there's some little creek running by or something, if you want to set up some chairs and just quietly sit and wait by the creek, you might have higher odds, but I can't guarantee it. I don't know their hunting hours, so maybe someone else can chime in.
I will also say, if any of you follow any of the birding pages on Facebook, there's Kentucky Birders, there's Backyard Birding, there's some other ones. And I have seen people who are also photographers, in addition to being birders, posting pictures of barred owls that they've seen in parks here in Kentucky, Louisville, Lexington. So that might be a good way. Now, I know you've got some nearby that you wanted to see, Maria, but for other folks, that may be a way to see them. Caitlin Cross asks, do saw-whet owls come to Kentucky? Which is a really good question. They're the cutest ones, in my opinion.
They do. That's a great question. They do. And there's a banding program, but they're not common. And there's many birds that I didn't mention in this presentation that are considered kind of rare in Kentucky. So yes, they do come to Kentucky, and they also migrate. So they're pretty cool. And this comes back to the question of observing owls and any other animal. You'll know when you're too close. Some behaviors that are pretty obvious telltale sign that you're too close is the snapping of the beak. It makes a very loud sound, and that's really important to be aware of. That if you're disturbing an animal, you can just back away, especially when they're nesting. Just give the animals space when you're observing them. Do not use flash if you're photographing the birds. So just be mindful of the environment that you're in, and you can happily enjoy watching birds when you're thinking about those things.
Kristen, who I was calling iPhone, but she says her name is Kristen. She had a question about the Kestrel box and the screech owl nest boxes. She asks, what would be ideal settings for putting up boxes to attract some of these birds?
I think the best way to address this question is, after this presentation, I will send some resources about what you need to know before setting up a box, because as it is with bird feeders, it requires some work and time commitment. So yeah, I will send this presentation and the resources about box building or box setting.
Great idea. And, I'm not skipping these other questions in between, but I did want to make a comment. Chris mentions Wild Birds Unlimited in Frankfort is doing a Raptor program at West 6th Farm here in Franklin County out 127 on May 21st at 3:00. There will be owls there, but I wanted to make a plug for Wild Birds as a place where you can buy bird boxes. You can buy books that talk about the best places to put them and the height and the surroundings and whatnot. Same for any kind of bird box. But even if you don't choose not to buy one there or whatever, Kristen, the owner of the store, is very knowledgeable, and she can also answer questions about any kind of birds. But she, like I say, sells the nest boxes and would be tickled to talk to you all about them. Austin, who had commented earlier on how helpful this program was for someone who's doing a master naturalist program, mentions that Salado Wildlife Center here in Frankfort has one, he says, had some bald eagles years ago. I think at this point there's just the one, but I may be mistaken. I haven't been there in a few years.
Yeah, that's a great outlet if you're going with your family. And yeah, I went there in 2019 and I've seen one bald eagle.
Yeah.
So for sure you can see a bald eagle. And
At least one, right?
if you at least one, and if you head to one of the lakes near us, even Jacobson Park has had eagles, which is a pretty urban park. Yeah, that's somewhere you can see a bald eagle in the wild.
Yeah, it's so nice to see them making a comeback. Parker, who by the way is 9 years old, wants to know if it's true that a golden eagle will drop a turtle on sharp rocks to break its shell.
That's awesome. I really hope it's true. That is a great question. I did not know that, and I have been looking for cool facts about golden eagles. That's pretty. Does anyone, Gary, maybe, does anyone know?
Yeah, feel free to speak up, folks, if anybody knows.
Great question, Parker.
I know, I love that. Parker's been so engaged, and it's so great. As a former elementary teacher, it warms my heart to see elementary age students getting involved in some of these programs and interested in birds. Got a couple that are sort of Frankfort related questions here or comments. Danny comments that he's seen red-tailed hawks at Frankfort Cemetery. I have too. I've seen a lot of birds there. It's a fabulous place for birding. So yeah, that doesn't surprise me. And then Tamara, in regard to Frankfort, says that was wondering if the huge birds you see all over East Frankfort and downtown that appear to be hunting in groups are turkey vultures. They are. I can tell you that because I live in South Frankfort and I see them by the river there. And they're not hunting. They're soaring on the warm rising air. And I think they seem to be around the river a lot, which I feel like maybe is, again, drafts from the difference in the temperature, from the air temperature and the water temperature or whatever. But yes, lots and lots of vultures in Frankfort. It's interesting.
Absolutely, yes. And if you go to the Frankfort Cemetery at close to sunset, you will see hundreds of them. Yes. Because they will gather and go to where they sleep, which is called their roost. So they will go together in some trees and they all head together at the same time. It's pretty amazing to watch. And really about red-tailed hawks, one thing I didn't mention is the easiest way to see a red-tailed hawk is, of course, not the driver, but if you're in the passenger seat, just look on the power lines. I have once taken a road trip and probably in that road trip drove 2 hours, or someone was driving me for 2 hours, and I saw maybe 5 red-tailed hawks just in 2 hours, just looking at the power lines. So keep your eyes open, not while driving, but keep your eyes
open while you're driving.
But it's so easy because red-tailed hawks have been adapting, to roads and our environment, and they seem to really like hunting on roadsides. So just keep looking for them.
That's very true.
Kelly, as far as bald eagles go, everyone else may already know about this. I'm new to bird watching, but I've started watching an eagle cam that has just been a complete joy. I believe it's, I think the Friends of Big Bear Valley. That's the page name, like on social media on Facebook, but like apparently the past couple of years their eggs haven't hatched or things have happened to the eggs, but this year they had an eaglet that hatched, and so they've been it hatched like maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, and so I've been watching him, and as he gets fluffier and fluffier and they feed him, and it's been such a joy to watch. Just
I'm so glad you brought that up, Diane, because with all these bird cams, especially with raptors, I think for me, one of the most beautiful things, and I highly encourage you to just look once, is we think of raptors as hunters and very, they are aggressive. They have to hunt and find prey, but when they're feeding their young, they could not be more delicate and soft, and it's amazing to watch.
Someone makes a comment that KU, Kentucky Utilities, has a Peregrine Falcon cam, and there are 4 eggs in the nest now. So yeah, I think that's in Lexington, but I may be wrong. Maybe Mia, who posted this, knows that for sure. But I know there have been nesting Peregrine Falcons in Lexington on on high-rise buildings, believe it or not. So, and there's one question I didn't want to miss because we've been talking and talking, and I kind of scrolled past it. Someone asks, where can you see Osprey? Kelly, where can you see Osprey in Kentucky? And I've actually seen one in Franklin County at the West 6th Farm. Now, it was flying over, it wasn't diving into the water, but you know, it was obviously going between bodies of water near West 6th Farm. But Nor, can you add any other suggestions for Kelly?
Yeah, no, great question. The easiest way to see an osprey is to head to a lake near you, but an even easier way to see one is to go to a hatchery, because those, you know, that's easy picking for an osprey. And there's a hatchery in north of Frankfort called the Pfeiffer Fish Hatchery. It's a Fish and Wildlife Department resource. And there's also the Minor Clark Hatchery near Moorhead. What else? I haven't been to the other hatcheries, but I'm sure there are many more. So that's a high likelihood of seeing an osprey there.
Good point. I forgot about the hatchery. I just wanted to mention a couple people. This is what I get for not watching the chat as closely as I should. Somebody had already answered Tamara about the vultures in Kentucky. Sorry. And then Caitlin mentions that in Europe, they refer to hawks as buzzards. So, okay. So I guess there's a little of that confusion there going on. And then let's see here. Oh, I apologize. I've already lost my place. Oh, Meredith, they do a great eagle weekend at a couple of Kentucky state parks with lots of birds. So that sounds like fun. I was not familiar with that. And now April says she's going to really be looking at the kestrels on her Mercer County farm to see if they're male or female. And then April, you lucky duck, says, my husband worked for the Peregrine Falcon Fund back in college when he was studying wildlife biology, and said he was an unforgettable experience. Oh, so actually, I guess your husband's the real lucky duck, but that's really cool. I'm green with envy. That's really neat. Oh, you're welcome again, Parker. I think maybe Parker had to go, but he said, thanks again.
Thank you. Yeah.
I think that's all the questions and comments. I didn't mean for us to run so long, but I wanted to make sure to get everybody's feedback in there.
Yeah. Yeah, I really appreciate it. And I'm so glad a lot of people engaged, and I can't wait for the next one.
I agree.
All right. Well, thank you so very much to Noor and to Lisa and to all of the Frankfort Audubon Society for sharing their knowledge with us tonight. And thank you to everyone who participated. You guys have really brought up some great points tonight, some great questions, and shared information. We appreciate that very, very much. On behalf of the library, we just thank you for joining us tonight. And I hope that you will join us again in the future, whether that is virtually or in person, as we move back to in-person programming. If you're interested in seeing what's coming up at the library, do feel free to check out our website at www.pspl.org, or check out the Paul Sawyer Public Library Facebook page. All of our April events will be up in the coming days, should be up by the beginning of next week. So do check that out and see what we have coming up in April. We'd love to have you join us again. So thank you again, Noor and Lisa. I hope to see you all very soon. And I hope everyone else has a wonderful evening.
Thank you again. Bye-bye.